Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another Q&A on InRange TV. We do this once a month, and questions all come from our awesome Patreon supporters. So if you don't contribute there and you would like to get a question in, well, there's the answer to your question. So let's get right into it. We've got a bunch to do today.
Always do. And I think you're going to have a little more input on this one than I. Matt C10/63. P90 or MP7?
P90.
Oh, I'm going to agree with that, although you have more hands-on with the MP7.
Although I think you actually have more hands-on time with the P90.
I've fired a number of fully automatic P90s.
I've not. I've fired a semi-auto PS90 and a full-auto MP7.
We have divergent experiences, yeah.
But they both lead to the same conclusion. Now, there is a potential that the MP7 I shot was not quite set up right. I mean, it was really gassy, and it really did kick more than I thought it would.
Interesting.
I can understand the preference for the MP7 in some situations because it does pack down much more compact than the P90.
P90 is really small, though.
It's small, but the MP7 is really in like large pistol.
No, it is, and it's a more conventional design. Like if you don't want something weird and wonky, the P7 is that.
Yeah,
MP7.
Like, there are thigh holsters for an MP7.
Yeah,
I used one of them, and it's you can't do that with a P90.
No.
That said, so what I'm getting at is I understand why like some special operations type guys would prefer the MP7. But for me, when it comes to shooting, I prefer the P90.
I have shot a number of PS90s, which are the semi-auto, and I've shot a bunch of, actually I've had a chance to shoot a bunch of the full auto P90s, and man, I think people would be surprised to hear this every time I say it, but while I understand that cartridge isn't, the powerhouse that 5.56 is, but for its intended role with the right projectiles, that is a very controllable gun that is very easy to carry around. It balances extremely well. All the ones I've used have been very reliable. And I think even though they're unusual, the ergonomics are actually really good. This is an instance of where the bullpup really shines.
Yeah, and a 50-round magazine doesn't hurt.
No, you got, it's not that impotent around, and you've got 50 of them on tap.
Yeah.
For its intended role, for armor penetration and as a PDW, I think the P90 is pretty rad.
Yeah.
In fact, if you were to ask what's the sub gun to have today, that would be the one I want.
All right.
So, Oliver N., what are your thoughts of the Desert Tech MDR filling the role of a modern WA-2000?
In no way does the MDR fill a role of a modern WA-2000.
No, I mean the similarities are that it's a bullpup and it's 308.
Yeah.
But that's where that ends, right?
Yeah. The Walther was intended to be a semi-automatic precision sniper rifle. The MDR is not. The MDR is intended to be a battle rifle.
Combat gun.
Yeah, the Walther has no sustained fire capability. It's got single stack mags. They're like 5 or 6 rounds depending on the caliber. It's got a magnificent trigger.
The MDR's trigger is okay.
It's not bad, but the Walther is built with a really good trigger.
It's not a sniper, yeah.
And the Walther weighs a lot more.
It does. It does. And I haven't really done a lot of work with the MDR with a bipod and actually trying to do precision or long range anything with it. So I wonder. We didn't even group test the MDR.
No.
So I don't know. But they're such different guns that I don't know that there's any convergence there at all.
Yeah.
Luke H. In the event of the U.S. going to war with a country and infantry equipped with armor plates, do you still think that 5.56 will be sufficient, or maybe a new cartridge or projectile be required?
I have a reference.
Please.
What about their face? Is their face wearing armor?
It might be. There's a RoboCop future coming.
So that gets into this new development that we're hearing about now, that's being publicized now, about how the Army's looking at 6.5, and they're not looking at 6.5 Grendel. They're looking at 6.5 is basically 7mm Remington Magnum. They're looking at like 139 grains. It's something like 3,000 or 3,200 feet per second.
Okay.
It is a new like light Magnum sort of cartridge, and they want this in a select fire shoulder fired infantry rifle, and I think it's nonsense. I think it will not happen.
No,
that will not prevent a lot of companies from dropping a lot of money on things to try and on attempts to get it. But we've seen that a lot in the past. We've seen how many SPIW type trials that have gone nowhere. The U.S. Army has a long and storied history of holding rifle trials and selecting none of the above.
Yep.
For hundreds of years now. So how many casualties in modern combat are caused by small arms fire? How many of those are caused by hits that would have been stopped by a rifle plate?
Yep.
And is that resulting pretty darn small percentage worth scrapping your entire light weapons program for? Because, by the way, if they get rid of the M16, they're also going to have to get rid of the 249, because you're not going to be running around with some 6.5 light Magnum rifle and a 5.56 machine gun.
And now the IAR, same thing.
Yeah,
Yep.
every gun will
Everything
go.
changes.
Everything in 5.56 will go. Maybe they'll keep 240s, but at that point, if you've got a 6.5 Magnum machine gun, why would you bother with a 240?
That said, there's been people that have attempted to have one cartridge for their machine guns and their rifles, and it's never worked out. Not really.
Well, yeah, you always end up with either an underpowered machine gun, say 5.56, or an overpowered rifle, 7.62. Kind of take your pick, or accept the logistical overhead of splitting the two, say like the Soviets did with a 5.45 rifle and a 7.62 PKM light machine gun.
And I think that if there were some super duper crazy awesome armor piercing round developed for the purposes of defeating an opponent with armor, they would just up their armor game so quickly that it would become irrelevant pretty quick.
I think the armor is the easier technological development here than the rifle.
And so I don't think there's anything wrong with the 5.56. It continues to be the case, and if you're up against armor, you have to learn how to shoot differently.
Just give everybody one of the Neopop grenade launchers.
Or you target differently.
Because it doesn't matter if part of them is wearing armor if you're throwing around explosives.
No, that's true. That's true. Will W., would you do a video or go into how to set up ammunition for long-term storage?
Ammo can, open, take ammo, put in can, close, seal, long-term storage.
You don't just throw it, but then can you throw it in the ocean at that point?
Depends how good your ammo can is, actually.
Yeah, right.
You joke about that. I know a guy who, this was probably 30, 40 years ago, was living on the coast and a scuba diver, and there was an ammo supply ship that had either been sunk or scuttled or something in shallow water. And he and his buddies would go down there and they would salvage 50 cal ammo cans full of belted 50 BMG, bring it up to the surface, and a reasonable fraction of them were still sealed, and they'd pull the ammo out and they'd use it. And that is how they got to have fun time shooting an M2 Browning that one of the guys had. Literally, they're salvaging ammo from cans from the bottom of the ocean.
That said, putting it in an ammo can that has a good seal and storing it in a cool, dry place will, with any modern ammunition, make it last almost into perpetuity.
Yeah.
We have frequently shot on this, on in-range, extremely old ammunition that works just fine.
Yeah.
As long as it wasn't stored, like, in a mud bog, it's probably good.
Very high temperatures can degrade powder.
Yeah.
Time can degrade primers.
And that's the bigger culprit.
Yeah, it's usually primers that go bad. Well, the primers will go bad and cause duds or hang fires. If powder goes bad, it will cause overpressure. Because what typically happens is the powder breaks down and it ends up with more surface area, which means it burns a lot faster. And you can actually, I don't have the details to be able to share right
Isn't
now.
isn't that called be debased? I think the word is debasing the propellant or something like that.
I would need, this is a subject that would be worthy of some in-depth video, but like German powders from World War II are still fine. But there are some other formulations of powder from around that same time period, like the Turks were using in some cases, that will break down. And a lot of the ammo that when it comes in and you're like, oh, I just know this is going to be crap ammo, Ethiopian stuff. It's because it was made with a powder that breaks down in heat or maybe sometimes just over time. And because it's in smaller pieces, you've got more surface area per unit volume of powder. It burns too fast, you get overpressure, and that can cause problems. But it's a chemical. We should also point out that there are persistently, every so often, rumors come up that like the government's invented new powder that's only good for 5 years. That's always crap.
Yeah, that's true. But if that ammo is breaking down, like, or the propellant is breaking down, you will not only necessarily get higher pressures and higher velocities, you'll get inconsistency.
Yeah.
So one round will be 3,100 feet per second, the next one will be 2,700, then you'll have 3,000, then you'll have 3,400. You're also risking your gun.
Yeah.
So, all right, Jacob M. In your experience for an intermediate caliber rifle in a match environment, what is the best general type of optic to use?
Totally depends on the kind of match.
No, I'm on that's true. That's true. So let me add on to this. I have an Arsenal AK-74 that I'm using a Russian red dot on, but I have a Trijicon, ACOG, and an AccuPoint that I've been considering as well. The advantages of a fixed or variable magnification optics outweigh the speed of a red dot in a competition environment. If you're shooting 3-gun, you pretty much need a variable. I mean, it's gotten to that point. Like 3-gun has gotten so much about, not all, but so many 3-gun environments have become paper at 2 yards, target at 400, you can't see. Now, you can argue if that's practical or not. That's a different problem.
Yeah, that's not the question.
But it is a match environment.
Right.
I can tell you at 2-gun and Desert Brutality, we have consistently seen the winner is always a red dot.
Well, to be fair, our target presentations are basically, once you hit 200, it's probably a full-size silhouette.
Yep.
They don't tend to go beyond 200, so you don't really need magnification.
No, but even at Desert Brutality the first year, we had stuff out way further than that, but the red dot was still sufficient.
Yeah.
It's just not tiny targets that you can't see.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
I have a hard time seeing a place for an ACOG.
yeah, fixed magnification is almost never useful.
Yeah. The problem with the ACOG is you're hindered up close. And in most competition venues today, 4 power may not quite be enough. Like if you're going to stick yourself with a fixed magnification scope, you might want more than 3 or 4 from an ACOG.
3-gun is getting more and more to the point where 1 to 4 used to be the answer, then it's 1 to 6, and now you're seeing 1 to 8.
Yeah.
And what they're doing is just increasingly moving out and making the target smaller. Now, is that good for making the match more challenging to people? Sure. But is that practical? I don't know. Black dots. The U.S. military has held multiple trials to find a rifle substantially better than the AR-15, which has been unsuccessful. Outside of new technology, i.e. energy weapons, will there be a small arm sufficiently better than the AR that would warrant expense and time?
I doubt it.
Yeah. It's not happening.
I think it requires some fundamental change.
It'll happen someday.
Something will.
When he's talking about energy weapons, I mean, someday something will happen.
If there's some new formulation of powder, primer, something that changes cartridge design, then there's the opportunity to replace the AR with something better. But I could see the AR being the dominant firearm, the dominant infantry rifle for another 50 years.
Yeah, I agree. I know everybody wants to think there's this new thing, but
They're not really all that new.
no. Tim K, what sort of challenges would you like to incorporate into a 2-gun match, but haven't yet due to safety, budget, time, or effort reasons? What sort of awesome ideas have you had to scrap because the budget wouldn't allow it?
Oh, there's some.
Yeah.
I don't think you even really think about them because you just don't even think about them.
Probably.
Things like pyrotechnics on the stage.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
We've
right.
talked about doing things like gas masks, but not done it because we'd have to buy 60 gas masks.
Yeah, because people don't want to share gas masks. It's strange. It's like, you know,
and the Finns pulled it off.
They did.
Because they literally had a crew of like four ROs on that stage who were sanitizing and cleaning gas masks. So they had like 5
manpower.
and were cycled through them and kept them clean. We would not deal with that. We'd need to get one for everybody.
Yep.
Shooting from moving vehicles.
Yes. Now that I do want to do, and believe it or not, before in range we did do that, and then the range was like, "Stop
once.
doing that." Stop. We did it once, and it was awesome. And then the range was like, "Stop.
Yeah.
No more of that." Which it wasn't a safety issue; it was a perceived safety issue. But
There are some stage guns.
yeah,
Stage guns are often a problem if you only have one, especially if it's a valuable gun that like I can't afford to damage this in any way, and I only have one, so you can't use it because what if anything goes wrong with it, then you have to throw the whole stage out.
well,
If you had 3 of them,
that's true.
could be a little different.
Safety issues, for example, one would be great. Would be a 2-man match that actually included things like bounding Overwatch, shooting past one another, all like tactically and martially oriented skill sets is just not practical in a match environment. It's practical in the right training environment, not even in all training environments, but in the right training environment, it's practical, but it's not practical at a 2-gun match.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. But I think when you said moving vehicles, that's the one that really makes me go, moving vehicles.
Yeah.
Or moving targets.
Yeah, that's a budget one, not a safety one.
That's a budget one. Like LaRue makes some really awesome moving targets, like robot thingamajigs, and man, that'd be awesome, and I'd love it. But then you have 2 more problems. You have a budget problem; those things cost like a gazillion dollars. And then how do you make it consistent? Yeah, every shooter gets a different experience, which is okay,
We
but
can handle
not
that.
well ish. People like it's still ultimately a match, and we're like we considered fair and decided against it, but that doesn't mean we necessarily intentionally make it unfair. Right. So.
If we had the money to get 3 moving targets for a stage, we could figure out a way.
Yeah, we could.
Consistent enough.
Maybe you could set it where there's a specific speed setting every time.
Yeah, and it goes from point A to B to C to D.
Yeah. Well,
Lots of awesome stuff.
Frankly, even more than that comes to mind now that you think about it. But the list is probably endless.
Shooting while parachuting.
Yeah, that'd be good. Sure. Especially with an FG-42 because those were designed with the wait, never mind.
And a German single point parachute.
So you spin like this as you're firing. Yeah, it's great. Boy, that was the dumbest design ever. Not the gun, their parachute. Matthew J. Aside from shooting, what one skill would most 2-gun shooters benefit most from improving?
Health, physical fitness.
Right.
I mean, there are only 2. It's
Cardio,
physical fitness and yeah, more cardio.
Yeah, when you look at physical fitness, that can include lots of things. It can include flexibility. It can include strength, because we have feats of strength that happened in the last Desert Brutality, which were like, Lieutenant Dan and kettlebell.
I think cardio is the one that shows up the most.
It affects everything the most.
Yeah, and we do more of it. It's a lot. If you tally up like number of stages with running compared to number of stages where you're carrying an object, throwing an object, running comes up a lot.
Yep.
So running. Sprinting specifically, I would say.
Actually, suicide sprints.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's not so much like jogging 5 miles, it's sprint 50 yards as fast as you can.
And then do it again, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Stop, control your heart rate, do something precise, and then run 50 yards as fast as you can again.
Which is one of the things that very much differentiates two-gun from many other match environments. Because you've got people that do these things where they run like 100 miles and then shoot. Or I'm not kidding, but like they have these like marathon runs that include some shooting problems. And then you've got things like 3-gun that include walking 5 steps and shooting problems. No, it is. It's just what it is. And 2-gun is some other beast of its own accord. Madia S. How good or bad is the G41, both the W and M? Would you rather have a good bolt rifle in match/combat? Well, interestingly, I just did a video on InRange, actually, comparing the 41 and the 43 directly. Now, I compared the 41W to the 43. I've had a good amount of time shooting the 43, and I've shot the 41, but never in a match. I'm going to go ahead and say what I say, and then you go where you go. The 41W is definitely better than being stuck with a bolt-action rifle if you have time to maintain it. The 41W is maintenance intensive. You got to take off the thing, clean it. You got to make the annular piston, as someone liked to correct me, I called it a puck, but the annular piston that goes around the barrel, which is the correct term, puck, it works too. That stuff gets corroded, and you have to slow down, and you have to make sure that gun's in functional state. But let's say your G41 is perfectly maintained. It's kind of forward heavy and it's awkward, but it's still better than a bolt gun because you still have
light years better.
You still have the ability to have follow-up shots, and you've got 10 rounds on tap. The M,
I've never shot an M. I suspect you haven't either.
No, but look at that thing.
I suspect it would work fine until the part broke.
Which it will.
Yeah. Although, as an individual, like one person, and I'm going to do... I think the biggest problems with those guns, both of them, were on the large-scale logistical level. Like, when we issue 5,000 of these, we have 100 come back with broken parts.
Yep.
Instead of a good gun, we have 10 come back with broken parts.
Yeah, that's true.
And so, from the end-user perspective, you're still looking at, well, my chances are 98% it'll work instead of 99%.
Now, that said, there are actual historical accounts, and maybe this is just bias, of soldiers being given an M and saying, you can keep that, and I'll stick with my bolt gun.
Yeah.
I've not read anyone saying that about the W. So, I mean, the M really is this Rube Goldberg contraption.
Yeah, it's not as good as the W.
Yeah. So, but your answer is you would still take the W or the M.
I would take either one over a bolt rifle.
Yeah, I would say the same, I guess, when it really comes down to it, but I would prefer the W.
Yeah. The key is stay in the logistical rear end of the Army, take your M home, and sell it to an American after the war for a pile of money.
Yeah, those things are worth a lot. Both the W and the M are worth a lot of money, but the M's worth a lot more than the W.
Yeah, M's are like $10,000 guns.
That's because the W went into actual legitimate production.
Yeah, they made about, 5-6 times as many.
Yeah, and the M was just really never got off the ground. Beacon R. You've mentioned several times about how difficult it is to break into the gun market with a new or even retro product. How does Brownells keep hitting it out of the park with functional, reasonably priced retro products?
Easy. They're working on a platform that they don't have to completely re-engineer.
Yeah, I agree. So when you look at it, the BRN 180 is a little different, but that's coming. But when you look at all the retro guns from Brownells right now that we currently have dealt with, the BRN Proto, which is the AR-15 prototype, the BRN 10, which is the AR-15, AR-10, and the Colt 605, BRN 605. The AR went through a lot of iterations and evolution through its history. However, the changes the AR actually went through to where it is today are quite small when it comes to actually the parts and the manufacturing processes.
And Brownells isn't making any attempt to reproduce the original internals. So the bolt on your BRN Proto is a modern, up-to-date, current production AR-15 bolt. The Brownells AR-10 is not, they're not duplicating the internals of the original Cuban pattern AR-10s, which are substantially different.
On the R10 it is.
Parts don't interchange between early and late AR-10s. Things like buffers, springs, a lot of these elements that were an integral part of the development process of the AR platform. Brownells isn't recreating the old ones. They're taking the modern stuff They're putting it in a retro package, which is primarily the external controls and features and aesthetics. And that's why they're able to do it. That's why they're able to do it reliably. And then these are parts that are mostly in production. So imagine if you're going to build a new retro rifle, but you don't have to create the bolt carrier, the bolt, the fire control parts, the barrel. All of those things are in production. We're going to go buy a new off-the-rack AR-15 bolt, which is like the most produced gun in the United States. And we have this massive economy of scale already working in our favor. You're going to make a reproduction Fedorov. Okay, you get to make every single part.
You're starting from scratch.
Right.
And even if you're like, for example, if you look at the different retro Brownells AR guns, there are differences. I mean, even the upper receiver and the lower receiver have elements to them that are different. But you're talking to, in that regards, you're going to someone who's already manufacturing upper receivers and lower receivers and going, all right, you guys make the modern AR receiver. We want to make the retro AR receiver. Here are the minor differences that went from here to there. That's not a huge leap.
Right.
When you look at the bolt carrier group in the Proto, it does not have any forward assist teeth on it. But all that is a bolt carrier group that you would have just not cut the cuts into.
Right.
So, hey guys, you're making bolt carrier groups, right? You know that, don't cut that part out. Don't just leave that manufacturing step out. Cool? And then chrome it.
Yeah.
Now you're really close to the original bolt carrier group and the original gun, but you're still dealing with modern components.
Right. So that's how they're doing it. They are able to bypass a lot of the engineering development and a lot of the reliability testing.
Now, maybe someday Brownell will reproduce something else that's not an AR platform. Well, the BRN10 or the A180 or the 18 will be something else, but the 180. But I don't know. That's the answer, though.
Yeah.
That said, they're doing an awesome job, and these guns really do handle a lot like the originals.
Yeah. Don't take that as a comment that they're inferior or undesirable in some way. They're awesome. It's this really cool confluence of you can get the cool retro gun without having to do the new engineering, and that's great for Brownells because they can do it. And it's good for us because it makes the gun affordable and reliable.
And we get to shoot something that is pretty close to the original thing. Even little things like in our video about the Proto, there's little nuances on that don't meet the eye. Like for example, the front pin is not captured. It goes bloop and just falls right out. It's a special, but that's a terrible design feature. I'm glad that they improved that in the layer AR. But Brownells is putting the effort in, and there's the pin is different. It's got a little ball bearing detent in it, which functions differently.
They're incrementally making them a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better every time.
Yep. So I mean but because it's AR based,
yeah,
that's the real answer.
Yep.
Steve, I don't know, speak to the devil. Stephen T, any plans to evaluate the BRN 180 upper from Brownells in an upcoming 2G ACM? Yes, of course. We haven't received one yet.
Yeah.
So I was in contact with them. They're going to be getting one to us. You're going to be seeing the BRN Proto. You've already seen the 605. You've definitely seen the BRN 10. And the BRN 180 will definitely be there. And I'm actually really excited about it. I'm interested in that.
Yeah.
So you will see it for sure. Ian?
Yes.
No, it's written by Ian.
No.
Yeah. Who's on first?
I don't remember doing that.
Wow. There is more than one Ian in the world, actually,
Yeah.
believe it or not. I met this Ian from Recoil Magazine. He even spells it different than you.
I actually got emailed on Facebook by Ian McCollum.
Really?
Yeah, another Ian McCollum.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the best by your standard uniform or well, this is for you actually. It should be. What's the best by your standard uniform or costume from Desert Brutality?
Mine?
Yours?
Part of the, unfortunately, because we're always on one squad and we're shooting the match, while the match happens, we don't get to see most of the people there.
Yeah.
So I don't have a real good appreciation for a lot of the other people who came in period uniform or other costume.
I will tell you this, and this is of course biased because it's us, but it wasn't Desert Brutality. My favorite ever that we did, both of us, and it was the same match, was the first Red October.
Oh,
and you were there as the narco traficante.
That was a lot.
And I was there in that Spetsnaz costume.
Yeah.
And both of us, when you look at the picture,
those were legit outfits.
We had them. It was pretty solid. I'm sure there was something anachronistic about mine somewhere, but reality is, you look at mine and it's like it's pretty much 1980 Spetsnaz, and yours absolutely was a drug runner mule. Like it was good.
Yeah, that one was.
They were both really good, and there was research put into both those costumes. Yeah. So it was pretty cool.
By the way, we put a substantial amount of effort into attempting to get an actual drug runner's backpack.
We did.
It would have still, I mean, God, I'm really glad we didn't in retrospect, because we would have been driving across Utah with something that just, like, you probably could have smelled
they're sniffing us with dogs.
100 yards down the road from one of those backpacks.
Because there were Border Patrol guys that are like, maybe we can get you one of a real backpack that
Yeah.
was like out in the field.
Like, it'll be full of choya buds, but
we ended up recreating that with a
Yeah.
box and
Yeah.
some burlap.
yeah.
But I mean, it was
Project
your outfit was down to having the burlap strapped around your feet.
Yeah.
And I did work on the Spetsnaz thing with the shirt and stuff. It really
That was good. That was a good one.
Those are my favorites, actually. Chris C, second time asking. Sorry we don't get them all the first time, but this is one that I've already addressed, but I figured it would be worth having. Aluminum GI mags versus steel GI mags versus polymer mags. PMAG benefits and downsides.
PMAGs are better for everything.
PMAGs are better for everything. Steel mags are not the benefit you think they are. They still can be bent and deformed unless they're so heavy that they're now so heavy you don't want them. And aluminum mags can be bent in insidious ways that you don't know that they're malfunctioning until they malfunction. PMAGs, when they fail, just break, and you throw them away and get another one.
And they don't break as often.
And they generally don't break.
There is one use for aluminum and steel mags, and that is to put on the wall in a gun that originally would have been issued with a steel or aluminum mag.
Or if you want to be super retro guy and you don't mind having malfunctions occasionally.
Yeah.
The reason I put this on here is because we had a video on YouTube about this. We had a whole "What Would Stoner Do" magazine thing, and ended up taking it off because of the new prohibitions about magazines larger than 30 rounds. And the video included a very deep discussion about the D60.
We might want to put that back in because that turns out not to have been enforced in the way we were concerned it would be.
Okay, well maybe we can republish that video because it was pulled down.
This is not proactively because we didn't want the channel to.
Guys, this isn't cowardice. It's like you don't want to lose your channel. And when you see that, and they specifically, and all the dubiousness that is YouTube, there was a rule that specifically said magazines larger than 30 rounds. And we're like, well, that's very clearly demonstrated in this video. So perhaps.
I ignored it on Forgotten Weapons because I had so many videos with old machine guns and such that had big mags that I'm like, I can't conceivably do this, so I'm just going to leave it.
Nothing came of it?
No. So I think we're okay on that front.
Interestingly, I did a video that never got released, which was the mechanics and using a belt loader, a Ukrainian belt loader.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. We can put that up too.
Was it Yugoslavian? It was Yugoslavian, but it was loading belts with a Yugoslavian belt loader. Same Russian one. I didn't put it up because, well, this is definitely more than 30 rounds. So, all right, interesting, but there you go. Ferris, second time asking. Do you guys have a rubric or Bible for how to put together two-gun stages or advice on running matches who those of us cannot make it to Arizona? No. This comes up a lot, and there's been conversation back and forth between you and I and others about actually putting a book together about this topic. I don't know if there's an audience for that. The reason I ask that is I get this question a lot, but if there was, like, say, for example, a book on that topic, a book about the philosophy of two-gun and the philosophy of action shooting, and here's stage design, who's going to buy that? It's a question to you guys. Is that something that people would buy? I don't know. However, don't have a rubric or a Bible and probably could write one. It's something that we should think about. I would say your best advice right now is why don't you just look at what we're doing in the videos? Just straight up copy them.
Yeah.
Like, why not? Like, if you haven't shot these stages because your local match doesn't have them, there's nothing wrong with going back to an archived two-gun match from in-range from 4 years ago and going, I like that stage. Yoink. Yoink. Yep. Copy it. Anthony H. Which YouTube channels do you watch and who would you really like to collab with?
Collaborations are a tricky one because the problem is usually the channel you like because they do something unique and they have expertise that you don't.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for example, this isn't a YouTube channel, but the one that comes to mind would be Dan Carlin.
Oh, yeah.
On the one hand, I would love to do something with Dan Carlin, but it's not. It's actually because I'd love to get to know Dan Carlin better and be a part of something that he's involved in because that'd be really cool. But if it's, okay, we're going to do a cooperative, collaborative thing, like, I don't know the history as well as he does. He probably doesn't know the small arms as well as I do. So what you end up with a video where it's either one person spectating on the other person's expertise or two people both doing something that neither of them is all that good at. Like,
isn't he more known for podcasts than YouTube channel though?
Yeah, that's what I said. He doesn't have a YouTube channel that I'm aware of.
Okay, but you're speaking of him as a media creator.
Yeah, and so are there, a lot of people have suggested doing a collaboration with Steve 1989.
Yeah.
Which, okay.
We do food stuff once in a while.
Sure, but what would we do? Like, what would the collaboration look like? Because people want that because they like what he does and they like what we do.
Yep.
But I don't know what the middle ground is.
And we've done food and he does food, but if he does food well and we do a food one, is there really a value of us both doing food together?
Right.
Like, it would be more interesting if he came and shot and then we did food. Like, then you're crossing streams in a way.
Deliberately doing it, we're going to do the things that we aren't known for.
Yeah.
But maybe.
Here's the other thing. Actually, I actually do watch a lot of, for all the problems with YouTube, I watch a lot of YouTube. We were talking about this earlier today. And of all the content I watch on YouTube, gun-related content's probably 10% of it. I don't really watch gun-related channels. Not really. I watch CN Arsenal. I watch your videos. Not all of them. I watch the ones that actually, you put out a lot of content. I watch the ones that intrigue me. And then that's about it for me watching gun-related content. All of my other content's something else. I watch a lot of history. I'm really interested. I really love this channel. A guy named Jackson Crawford. He's doing. He's a PhD in Nordic studies, and he does like academic research into Old Norse, Nordic history, mythology, and it's like very legitimate, awesome stuff if you are interested in that topic.
Right.
But how the heck could that be a collab? Like, there's no room for that at all. But that's the kind of stuff. I watch stuff that has really nothing to do with what we do.
If people want to know, like, 3 that I watch, Mark Felton Productions.
Oh, yeah.
Whom you've seen as well.
Yep.
Small little channel. He does little sort of vignettes, 3 to 5 minute, maybe 8-minute vignettes of interesting military history things. Like, did the Japanese have a Tiger tank? 5 minutes. The answer is yes, sort of. And it's mostly, there's a lot of German, and it's mostly World War II and Cold War. Aircraft, naval, tanks. Not really small arms. But I find them, they're short, they're very easily consumable, and I find them very interesting. Captain Disillusion.
Oh, you sent me some of that.
Yeah, I don't think you've ever watched it.
No, I have. That's not for me.
He does basically visual effects, and it's the analyzing, like largely analyzing purported, weird effects on video. Like, oh my God, you won't believe what someone caught on film. And you're like, oh, well, actually, it's fake, and here's how they created it. And I find that interesting. And then CGP Grey. I really like CGP Grey. He does mostly sort of geopolitical stuff, but
he's in my subs.
I find it a very, I think he's probably a very well educated guy, and I find his perspective on things fascinating.
His content's spotty. Not in terms of quality, in terms of how often he puts something out.
Yeah.
So I mentioned Jackson Crawford, which is a PhD Nordic Studies. I watch channel-wise, I'm trying to think of the names of some of these things. I watch a lot of stuff where it just leads me down rabbit holes, like then and now video of a place before and after, historical stuff. I recently watched, actually the other night, I watched a full real-time historical discussion while CGI rendering real-time sinking of the Titanic. And it's Titanic Honor and Glory. They're making this incredible VR/game/walk around the Titanic 3D simulation on the computer, and they put up incredibly excellent historical references about a lot of maritime history and stuff around the Titanic. And April 14th, which was just a day or two ago, was of course the anniversary of the sinking of the Titanic, and they had a live stream while in their simulation the ship hits the iceberg and starts sinking, and they were discussing with a historian everything going on in real time.
Oh, that's cool.
That's the kind of stuff I like.
Okay.
And there's another one I watch. Collab? Nah.
Yeah.
What collab is there, right? Yeah. So, anyways. This one surprised me because it was out of context. Or actually, no, here we go. I got 2 more. Jordan W. What's the biggest or most surprising lesson learned from running old equipment at 2-gun? Good or bad?
Well, we talked about this one before we started filming. Should I just steal the answer that you came up with?
Yeah, you can steal my answer.
How incredibly nice modern intermediate small cartridges are.
Yeah, we were talking about, like, what was the point? He's like, what, do we just say it's all crap? And no, of course it's not all crap.
Most of it's crap.
It is.
Most of the old stuff doesn't work very well.
But when
modern standards.
But when you shoot this old stuff, whether it's semi-automatic or not, and then you go to a 5.56 or 7.62x39 or 5.55 gun, you're like,
oh, this is a lot nicer.
That's the answer. Like, it really, no, and there's a reason that those have become standards, because everything changes.
Yeah.
The whole thing, fire controllability, sight recovery, handling of the gun, weight of the gun, ammunition weight, all of it changes.
Yeah.
It really was the thing.
Yeah.
So it must have been, like, for the small numbers of guys that got, the original MP44s and 43s, they must have been like, oh, wow. It must have been at that moment like, this is magic.
Yeah.
And now we all get to experience that. We don't really have reference to go. We didn't go from a G41 or a K98 to this thing, but in range we do.
Yeah.
And every time I get one of these, a relatively modern gun and an immediate cartridge back in my hands, I'm like, yay, we can have a reasonable score and we can actually have fun shooting this.
It's so much more effective.
Yep.
Yeah.
Really is. London Jolly. When do you see large calibers being allowed back into 2G ACM, Desert Brutality, etc.? Well, I found this
There's
surprising.
a misunderstanding there.
We never didn't allow them. What happened was this year's Desert Brutality, which was done at the Southern Utah Practical Shooting Facility, SUPS, in St. George, is having a little bit of problems with their county board. And the county suddenly decided to tell them that they could not allow anything larger than 7.62 by 39 on their range. Why the county decides such a thing, I have no idea. I can't answer this. But it was a county edict.
Right.
And then it made us, since that was the facility we're going to work at, which, by the way, was wonderful, and they were great to work with and helped us run an incredible match, made us have to change Classic Division to include a larger scope of intermediate cartridges, but exclude 308 and above.
Right.
It has never been, and at this moment should probably never will be, excluded from local 2G ACM
right.
or other matches we may or may not run. So that was strictly the facility, and we do allow it now. As for Desert Brutality 2020, I don't know what's going to come of that. We may still be up there, and maybe the county thing will be resolved, or we'll be at a different facility.
SUPS has talked about moving to a new facility where that wouldn't be an issue. It's all open right now. We don't have anything on paper for 2020 yet.
Here's the thing, and no offense to you, London Jolly. The reality is it didn't affect the match at all. It was still a fantastic, splendid event. And while this always comes up, and we've had specialized divisions at times for these big guns and stuff, the reality is the amount of people that actually want to bring out their big G3 foul thing on paper, they're there. In terms of actually shows up doing it, very small numbers.
Not zero. There are people who talk about it and then do it, but there aren't very many of those people.
It is not it's not a very attractive division.
Yeah. For reasons we just addressed like 2 questions ago.
Perfect timing. Max O, if you found yourself in a 1943 combat zone, which pair would you rather have? The TT-33 and a PPS-43, or a 1911 A1 and an M1928 A1 Thompson?
PPS-43.
Piece of cake.
Easy.
And the TT-33 personally, I know that they are very derivative guns. I actually like it better than 1911. I think it's an easier gun to control, and I prefer it. But I'm not a 1911 guy.
I don't. Given just the pistol question, I'd take the 1911, but I think the 1911 is kind of irrelevant when paired with a submachine gun, and I'd much rather have the PPS-43.
I would take the TT-30.
Half the weight, literally.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Its ammo is half the weight. Yeah. The magazines are 35 rounds instead of 30 or maybe 20. 20s and 30s both. That 28 A1 Thompson will not take drums.
It actually has ergonomics.
Yeah, and it's half the weight and it's shootable.
Ever
The
done
stock kind of sucks, but I'll happily deal with that.
Ever done a mag change on a Thompson? Try it. It's awful. It's literally awful. And I still prefer the toe grip to the 1911. So I would prefer both right off the bat. So
now the question is though, if he throws in a third option of a P38 and an MP40, then what do you take?
Oh, I would take the P38 and the MP40.
Okay, because I wouldn't.
Really?
I'd stick with the PPS-43.
Really?
They've both got awful stocks. So
MP40 is a quality gun, though. I mean, well, not by their actually.
It's a nicer made gun.
It is,
yeah, but that doesn't matter.
It's more controllable too.
I just don't like them as much.
It's bigger.
It is bigger.
43 is easier to schlep around.
Yeah.
John S. What's up with the straight out 3 to 12 o'clock bolt handles on older World War I area and earlier rifles? Seems worse in every way than an L bolt, or for lack of a better term, dog-legged bolt handles. You mean typically refer to them as bent. No one thought of that earlier.
Gives you lots of space to grab it.
I actually think that the straight bolt handles are easier to use.
Yeah.
They are, but they protrude more, getting caught on stuff. And if and when such a thing as optics comes around, it's a problem.
Yep.
So I think the bent bolt handle was there to have less sticking out protrusions and for potential scoping of those designs over time. But if you're actually practically using it for speed to get hits on the clock, I think the straight bolt's better.
You can see they had to account for not being able to get a solid grip on the bolt handle, like on the K98K, by scalloping out the stock underneath it.
Yep.
So you could actually get your hands in there.
Yep.
The straight out the side bolt handle means you just hit it and go.
So interestingly, I think that in use, the straight bolt is better.
Yeah.
You agree?
Yeah.
It was one of those things where it was a compromise.
Yeah.
Arturo C. Given that the pool of shooters is smaller than pistol or rifle / carbine, are there any regularly scheduled submachine gun matches, not just semi-autos, or are they just one-off events?
Knob Creek has a regular one, but that's a
Once a year.
annual.
That's
or
kind of
twice annual.
that's a one-off event then.
Okay. No, there are no serious submachine gun matches because there aren't that many people who own submachine guns and are interested in shooting matches.
That's the difference right there. Rio Salado up in Phoenix has it's not Phoenix. I'll be corrected. It's one of the things attached to Phoenix which is never ending concrete.
Mesa or
I don't know. Rio Salado up there. The giant metropolitan Phoenix area contains a range called Rio Salado. And they have fairly regular, like a couple times a year, submachine gun matches. And there is a relatively small turnout. And stages are designed in weird ways, like knock down all the bowling pins with one burst or you get a penalty, which they're trying to force you to use the gun where you just have to continuously put out a rate of fire, which, by the way, isn't how you use a submachine gun. Not really. But the amount of people that show up is small. The emphasis is different. And it's a lot of people like wanting to, rub diapers on their expensive guns. I'm just saying it's what it is. And it's like, people that can afford and generally have these things aren't the same people that necessarily want to go out and run around in the dirt and throw them in the dirt.
Yeah.
This is why Lage is doing incredible work by turning those cheap is not the word.
it used to be, but not anymore.
Lower cost M11s, M11A1s into something useful.
Yeah.
Because now you're a little bit like, oh well. But even those are going up in value.
Now it's $6,000 to $8,000 for an RPB Mac.
So no, they don't exist. Not really. Patrick W.
By the way, part of the problem is that the practical way to shoot one of those is to put it in semi-auto. Seriously. Rifles and submachine guns alike,
Yep.
the most effective way to shoot it is semi-auto.
At least it's on score, for sure.
And score is what competition's about.
Full auto has a very limited role,
Yeah.
even in a submachine
Even
gun.
in military use. The number of military guys I've talked to are like, I literally never fired my M16 in full auto.
Yep.
And I would have gotten in trouble if I had. It's substantial.
Mhm.
Like, the machine gun is the 249 or the 240 Bravo. If it's got a belt in it, then it's on full auto. If it's got a magazine in it, it's semi-auto only.
Yeah, the full auto is emergency situations and very specific tactical doctrine that has limited but necessary, but limited application.
Yeah.
I found this question weird. Patrick W. Would either of you be willing to shoot a match with a Desert Eagle? And when I saw that, I'm like, considering the things we've done on this channel, why would we not be willing to shoot a match with a Desert Eagle? We just haven't.
Yeah, the Desert Eagle mags are what, 7 rounds?
Mm-hmm.
So you're gonna need
I think there's
what,
7.
like
I don't know.
7 mags.
Whatever they are,
You're
they're
gonna need
limited.
a bunch of mags.
Yeah.
Sometimes 2-gun stuff is limited round count for pistol, but to be safe, you're gonna want a solid 5 mags. Most people who have a Desert Eagle have 2.
Mhm.
I have a holster that would hold the thing.
Yeah, that will go into
that's not
UM.
tricky.
That will not go into UM84.
Yeah. It's not a gun I have a lot of interest in owning myself. It'd be a borrow, and then who's going to loan you? You have to find someone who will loan you a Desert Eagle that doesn't care if it gets scratched up a bit, which is not really that's a Venn diagram that doesn't have much overlap.
My experience with
So-
Desert Eagles is I think they kind of suck. But
Now I shouldn't. People are going to watch this and interpret it as us looking for someone to loan us a Desert Eagle. I don't think we are.
no.
I'm like, if one showed up in my mailbox,
Yeah.
I would log it into my FFL books and okay, I guess. But I am not actively soliciting for a Desert Eagle.
And the idea of running around with 357 Magnum or 50 AE is not appealing.
It would have to be 50.
Fine.
You can't do that with 350.
Yeah, and we're going to be like, blam, and our score is going to go. Every round fired score goes worse. But I mean, it'll. I would do it. That's not what we do.
I don't know that I would learn anything from it. So
No, we'd learn that 50 AE is
overpowered.
Yeah. Jacob R. And this one I do like a lot, actually. Why does it seem like French military surplus ammo doesn't stand up as well to other countries? And I guess this is kind of going back to the question we had earlier, which is storage. And you're right. Your friend, we've gone through this. Like I've got World War II German ammo that works.
Mhm.
I've got Russian ammo that works. We've done it on the channel. I've got American ammo that goes back that works. I fired World War I ammo that worked. The French stuff you seem to have had a lot of issues with.
It's not just French. The World War II British ammo is pretty sketchy.
Cordite stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think with the French in particular, it's primers. Again, this is something that deserves more in-depth research, but my recollection is there's 2 different. They had a batch well, of what's available right now. Some of it is non-corrosive and some of it is corrosive. The corrosive primers still work. By the way, with 8 Label, that's the blue or black bullet sealant.
Oh,
That stuff works. It's corrosive, but it works. It's the red sealant stuff that's all duds, and I believe that's because that's actually non-corrosive primers. And part of the reason that corrosive priming compounds stayed in use so long was it was more long-term stable.
and they're resilient to very big environmental temperature changes. They work in hot climates. They work in freezing climates.
Yeah.
A lot of the Russian stuff still had corrosive primers way into like modern time because it really is the best primer.
It took a lot more experimentation and development to come up with a non-corrosive priming compound that had the same level of reliability and
Or at least close
benefits.
enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And you know what? It's not just French though. Like so, for example, I've got a bunch of Polish 30 Tokarev, and it's all click boom.
Yeah.
Bad click boom. Like click boom, like that kind of stuff, where it seems like there's a second gap. I mean, it's dangerous stuff.
Yeah.
I ended up putting it in a bag and be like, this isn't useful.
also keep in mind that most of that French surplus is 75 years old now,
Mhm.
because we're talking about World War II and earlier surplus, which most of the surplus ammo out there is 70s, 80s, maybe 60s.
That's true.
The French stuff is 8 Label and it's 7.65 French pistol ammo. The 7.5, there just isn't much of it out there.
Mhm.
The French surplus 5.56 that they started using in 79, they never surplus that stuff.
Yep.
So you're getting a slightly skewed view of it.
David S., are you willing to promote matches that the Discord is a private server that's provided to certain peoples at perk levels of X and above on our Patreon. I think it's $10 perk level and above. Organizing squads for the High Desert 3 gun June 7th through 9th. So what we have is a community of people on Discord that are in-range supporters. And while in-range is not going to High Desert 3 gun, they are getting together and having a fun time filled with camaraderie. And yes, absolutely willing to promote it. So here's some of that. Our Discord guys are going to High Desert 3 gun on June 7th through 9th. And let me know how else I should promote that beyond that. But absolutely. Time travel bushcraft. Are there plans to release old paid video content from before Patreon? There was only one.
Well, there was one episode that our original concept was like once a month, hour-long episodes that each would have 3, 4, maybe 5 segments in it. And you actually did publish one of them.
The Sawtooth Bayonet.
Yeah. And I don't see any, some of that early content is a little embarrassing to look at now. And
That one wasn't.
doesn't. That's
That's an awesome segment.
I'm very happy with that one. But some of the other content in there, there's no reason not to publish it.
But there's no real
As
compelling
individual
reason
segments.
to either.
Like we had a review of the Lage Max 31 upper, but we can do that much better.
Didn't really
rather
know what
than-
we were doing.
Yeah.
We
I
have-
don't remember.
We have
what-
an interview with
was it Fuller?
Jim Fuller. But that's so
Yeah.
dated now that it's like years ago.
More to the point, there's some content that was only released on Full 30. So we're exclusive to Full 30 for about a year.
The problem with that stuff is it's all 480. Nobody wants that.
Yeah.
So it's better to revisit than to release. But it wasn't paid. It was on Full 30. Still there too.
Yeah. Now
If you go to Full 30, you go to the InRange channel. That stuff's still on there.
Yeah. The very first episode was paid.
The
It
first
was
one.
on Vimeo. First episode. was-
But all the other stuff after that, and there was a year of being only on Full 30, and nothing's ever been removed from Full 30. So if you want to look at retro old timey InRange, you can do it at full30.com. So it's not gone.
And there is some pretty cool stuff in there.
No, there is, and there's stuff I want to revisit.
Yeah.
Like one of the ones I was thinking about is I shot a 2-gun match with a SVD, but with a red dot, like trying
Yeah.
to use it as a combat rifle versus a DMR. And I'm like, I looked at the video, I'm like, this is cool, but we could do way better. Like it's an interesting concept that should be revisited.
Yeah.
Kyle T, of all the guns you personally own, what is your favorite one to shoot besides your WWSD carbine?
I don't know. I'm going to cheat.
Go.
I'm going to take out the part of I own,
Okay.
and I'm going to say a Lewis gun.
Yeah, I can see that. I'm going to go ahead and say what I've said on the video a couple times, and I know not everyone can watch every one of these Q&As. I still love the RP46 DPM semi-auto build from SMG Guns. It's just, you just go out there and burn ammo, but man, that thing's fun. That's the
Yeah.
most fun. So the question is fun? That's it. That's mine. It's the RP46 belt feed conversion on the DPM from SMG.
We need to get a live DP receiver.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
If anyone has $30,000 that you want to send us so we can get a DP28.
Yeah, we'll buy one. Nicholas C. I love the practical orientation of your matches, but I feel as though one of the more important things you do is that you could train to do is missing. As important, if not more so, than marksmanship and weapons manipulation is effective use of cover. Do you think that within the limitations of a match environment, there's a way to implement the use of cover into stage design?
Nope.
No, and we've tried.
And IDPA has tried.
Yep, and they gave up. It is what you can do is put shooting boxes in a place that would kind of force the person to lean around something and therefore force them into a cover position they wouldn't have chosen otherwise. But when it comes to in the stage description, shooter must use cover.
Define use cover.
And then
Now-
suddenly you got your version
Now
of it.
adjudicate it.
And then it turns into a constitutional convention. Was he using cover? Was he not? What's the penalty? One person will say, well, I think this is cover. Another person will say he should have switched shoulders. He used his strong shoulder, leaned it around. Can't do it. It can be done in a training environment. Can't be done in a match. So, no.
You know, this goes, boy, this almost goes back to like, what could we do with that we can't because of budget and safety? You're shooting that way, and you have to have cover from this side because 90 degrees over here is an RO with a paintball gun. And if he hits you, you have a penalty or something. That could be a lot of fun, but it's completely impractical.
Sounds cool in practice. You could do that in the proper training environment. You could not do that at a public match.
Yeah.
Teddy, bipods and practical shooting, useful benefit or useless weight? Practical shooting needs to be defined. If you're talking about a match environment, some matches yes, some matches no. I think in the real world, more often than not, useful benefit.
I would agree.
Yeah, and we saw that with your FAMAS.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was actually quite useful for Desert Brutality.
Matthew M. asked this last month. Would you guys be willing to do a two-gun versus with an M14 M1A versus a BM59 to see what the advantages are of the BM59, if any?
Nope.
Why not?
I think it's a waste of time because I don't think a two-gun match would reveal anything relevant about that question.
They're so similar as it is in terms of practical application.
And in the context of what they would be asked to do in a two-gun match, they would be indistinguishable from each other.
Yes.
It's like, could we do a CETME L versus an HK33?
It'd be the same.
Sure, but you're not going to learn anything from that in that specific context.
I agree with that. Although I would do a two-gun match with an M14 or a BM59.
I'll do the BM59, you can have an M14.
I don't like either of them, to be honest, but sure. I would do it. I shot that BAR. Daniel R. So you guys have covered a wide array of old and older guns on the channel. What was the most fun to run through a match?
I really had a kick running the Shosha.
I think this changes a lot because every time we
Yeah.
this question asked, your brain goes back and you kind of wonder.
The Shosha was a lot of fun just for the novelty and the opportunity to do that, especially in uniform in a World War I themed stage.
Yeah, that was awesome.
I can also like the 1917. As mediocre as it always is to shoot either a 30-06 or a bolt action, much less the same at the same time. That's just a really nice gun for its time. That was one of those few old guns that didn't suck. Like, it's at a huge disadvantage, but it worked. It just worked reliably the whole match.
This isn't that old, and it's the same answer I gave last time, and I can get accused of being a Brownells shill. I still had the most fun with the BRN-10. The BRN-10 was fun.
It was a good gun. Yeah.
Well, it's not just that, it was fun. Like, I had fun shooting that. Like, it was like, oh, it's an AR on steroids, and I had a good time with it. Cool. And I guess it's an older gun and that it's a retro thing, but that's the one I've had a lot of fun with.
Okay.
Mike, do you think you'll be doing any more parts builds like you did with the CETME L?
Nope. A couple of reasons for that one. You want to start it off?
YouTube?
That's one.
YouTube would absolutely not only demonetize but strike your channel for that immediately.
Yeah.
One of the things that they are enforcing is anything that has to do with gunsmithing, gun manufacturing, how to build guns. They are like very stringent on that.
Yeah.
And the CETME L series isn't on the channel. If you want to see our CETME L series, just like we said earlier in this Q&A, go watch it on Full 30 or one of the other distribution networks, but Full 30 has it. That would be my first reason.
I think the other one is that it requires a substantial, like a really substantial input of time and equipment and dedication to do a build like that. There was, I did a bunch of home builds, but it was like 10 years ago. And I think the heyday of that is over.
Yeah, I agree.
That was back when your parts kit still came with an original barrel. So you didn't have to deal with sourcing a barrel, drilling gas ports and that sort of thing. AK builds, 1919 builds. There were a lot of things out there that were relative to today, they were much easier to do. And today, I just don't think it's worth it.
The day of parts kits builds is down.
You know, and actually, honestly, the other part of it is you're a mediocre welder and I'm no welder
I
whatsoever.
don't even know if I'm mediocre.
And well, you actually have a welder.
Wow.
And you like know how to pull it out and hook it up and weld something.
Yeah, I actually fix my Volkswagen sometimes.
I've not even gotten that far in it. It's a miracle I did as much welding as I did on the CETME L. But most of the parts kits out there today, they're torch cut receivers, and the first thing you have to do if you're gonna build them is you have to rebuild that receiver as a semi-auto by re-weld.
And that is an artist that does that. Actually, it's
Yeah.
a welding artist. Like those people are skilled.
That's so far beyond anything I'm capable of without a year of formal education on the subject.
I could turn it into a paperweight.
I can probably turn it into a paperweight on fire that I've hurt myself with.
But no, we're not going to revisit.
I burned myself and it lit all the paper on fire too.
Not going to
Fail.
Not going to revisit that.
Yeah.
Molly, we recently saw the culmination of a CNR arsenal project, well, along with Forgotten Weapons, called Project Lightning, of which Ian was a participant. By the way, I like the name. Everybody got really confused by this. Desert Brutality is confusing people because they're like, you misspelled desert. No, I didn't. It's called Desert Brutality for a
Google
reason. Google it. And Project Lightning was cool because it was lightning, like as in lightning, but lightning as in lighter.
Lightning the machine guns.
Which was a really, I like that,
Yeah,
that pun.
we like puns.
So there's two questions. Ian, was that not just the most awesomest of things?
It was pretty awesome. Yeah. It was not easy. That was a series of very long days.
Why did you have, it was only a couple days too,
We
right?
had 3 days.
Why did you compress it so much? Why couldn't you have had more time? Was there reasons? Was it
Scheduling,
was
time
it
availability.
your schedule? Or theirs?
Mine and theirs, both.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we all have things that we need to do.
Sure.
And part of it also was we underestimated how long things would take.
It was ambitious.
There was supposed to be one additional video that we just didn't.
Really?
We were going to do a test that was run and drop. So you start here and you have to go 50 or 100 yards, drop into position, and start delivering fire on the target, which would have addressed things like bulk, how easy is it to carry, and how long does it take to actually go from this to I am shooting, which would have benefited my show shop.
No.
But we just didn't have time, and we had to axe that one.
Sure.
So it was a tremendous amount of fun, but it was also a lot of work to do.
That's the dog. Thanks, dog.
He's breaking stuff.
I don't know what that was. Anyways.
Second one.
Carl, would you be willing to consider a similar crossover for yourself in the future? Yeah, totally. I mean, if it was something practical oriented, I would like to think that my experience in designing two-gun match stages would be viable and useful in such a thing.
Yeah.
So yes, and I have done collaborations with primary and secondary, and Dugan Ashley of Carnicon. Some serious, some comical. So that's already happened. But yeah, I would absolutely want to do that.
One of the other tricky things is doing a big project like that is there's a lot of expense in it. There was thousands of dollars.
Wow.
Ammo was the single biggest line item, but we spent, I think it was over 5 figures doing that series. Yeah. And so there has to be a way to make that financially viable. And with some of these sorts of projects, like you have to come up with a way, a mechanism to fund it. So we did okay on that one. We were able to recoup our costs, but not a whole lot more. And if we were going to do another one, it would be a matter of like, let's figure out how best to make this into a thing that can actually pay for itself and pay for the time that gets invested. Matthias and May spent something like 350 hours of labor doing B-roll, editing, and everything else. There was so much more.
They are perfectionists in their craft.
That's
so when
true.
you see it in their editing.
That's true. It came out looking gorgeous, but there was much more. You know, I flew out there, did 3 days of filming, and flew home, and that was only the very tip of the iceberg for them.
Yeah.
So for us to do one without having Matthias and May, they're willing and able to do all of that background work. Even if we had lower production values, there's going to be a tremendous amount of time involved. And so it's not quite as easy as just saying, oh, let's just round up every assault rifle from the Cold War and test them all against each other, or every submachine gun from World War II.
Yeah.
You know, and there was also the synchronicity of Matthias suggested that project when he had, I think, 5 of those 7 guns in his possession already because he had been getting them in to do regular Sea and Arsenal videos.
To call that an advantage would be to understate.
I had number 6 myself, the Up 6 Shosha, and his question to me was, are you interested in doing this, and do you think you know where we can find gun number 7? And I knew someone who had number 7 and was able to arrange it.
Cool.
Yes, we've gotten lots of suggestions, like you should do World War II submachine guns. Well, okay, now we have to start from scratch, and there's like 10 of them. Where do we find a PPSH, a PPS, a Thompson, a different version of Thompson, an MP40, an MP41, ammo for a MOS 38? Like, it's I like the idea of them. I would like to do another one. It was a lot of fun, and I'm very proud of the product. But there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, don't underestimate the administrative overhead, the financial overhead, and then the editing overhead after that. However, to answer the question, would I want to? Absolutely. Like when you started mentioning MP40s, MP41s, I'm like, oh man, it'd be cool to come up with some really righteous, practical tests for those kinds of guns.
Exactly.
And so I think I could have some input on that, but we'll see what happens.
Yep.
Tim OG, if you both agree that the Cold-Grade Terminator is the worst shotgun, yeah,
try and come up with a worse one.
And I had to think for a second. And the Zip 22 is the worst pistol. Yeah.
That one didn't take much thought.
So, to your opinion, what's the worst rifle ever? Worst rifle. Wow. Do you have one in mind? Go for it.
It's the Crossfire.
Okay.
It doubles as worst rifle and
that thing.
second worst shotgun.
Yeah, no, that thing is awful. Yeah, you're right.
I mean, that thing was pretty crap.
It took me a second to remember it, and then when you said, I'm like...
So here's an interesting thing about this. You have to look at this from a civilian perspective.
Yeah.
There is no military that has ever adopted a gun so crap that it's actually worse than crappy civilian.
No, and that's what I was thinking was the military stuck in my head, but you're right. You have to delve into the civilian mind.
The L85 kind of comes close.
I've never used one.
But even it's not as bad as some of these things. The thing is, the military goes through a trial and proofing process that usually does a pretty good job of weeding out things that are complete crap. The civilian market doesn't. You can make anything you want and put it on the market, and some idiot will buy it.
The Crossfire is a good answer.
And the Crossfire's it's crap. They offered them. Enough people got suckered into buying it because they thought it looked cool before it became common knowledge of how crap it was.
I'm going to leave it with that because that's such a good answer. I don't have anything that's ever going to even come close to that. Lewis R. Thoughts on the PTR 32? Currently, it's only one of the few options in 7.62x39 and AK mags in my band state.
It's heavy.
It's a beast for what it is. I don't think there's anything mechanically wrong with the concept. It's just you're dealing with an overly heavy rifle. Essentially, you're dealing with the weight of a 308 gun to shoot 7.62x39.
Yeah, it's a G3. Think of it as a G3 with a mag adapter for 7.62x39.
But all the ones I've dealt with have been fine. I've shot a few of them and they were okay. There was nothing wrong with
I
them.
don't think I've ever actually shot one.
Optics mounting, if you could, I guess you could do the rail thing on top. But I mean, Yeah, I mean,
it wouldn't really be my choice for much just because it's heavy. And
if I was in a band state and that was my choice, I don't know that I would bother with 7.62x39. I would just go 308.
Or 5.56.
Yeah. Paul R. Karl, I'm curious about your previous experience with fencing, not fencing as in fences, but as in blades, and would like to know your opinion on things like HEMA, as I've always been interested in blades as well as firearms. I have been around HEMA. I haven't done it. I went to go watch it.
Historical European martial arts.
Yep, yeah. So essentially, think of it as the two-gun of like bladed weapon fighting. These guys, these people, I should say, spar based, generally speaking, on the German book of fighting.
HEMA is to two-gun, or HEMA is to fencing, the way that two-gun is to high power.
Or three-gun, maybe. Ish.
High power in particular.
Yeah, I would agree.
Fencing is very formalized and very far removed from actual hit someone with a sword.
And but there are still manuals of bladed weapon fighting. There's an Italian one, a German one. The German one's the one I've seen most used in HEMA, but that doesn't mean there aren't other classes and disciplines. But they try to really practically relearn the martial art of bladed weapon fighting based on those books.
Yeah.
And they do a great job. And it is a true sport and competition with historical roots. Really is.
I think it's pretty cool.
It's pretty two-gunny, actually.
I've participated only in the briefest way in a couple different venues, and I really enjoyed it.
I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree.
I would rather do that than fencing, although fencing was more available to me at the time, and that's why I did fencing. And in fencing, foil is my least interested weapon, and I always preferred the epee because it was the one that most... Kind of like shooting black powder guns in Cowboy, it was the one that kind of closely got to the real thing. In that the rules
you can see the real thing sort of from there.
You can taste it. Like foil still has this concept of if you're attacking, the only person's only allowed to defend, and you can only strike certain regions. And so there's this like chess, like you can attack or not attack. With epee, you can always attack or always defend, and you can strike anywhere on the body.
Okay.
And when you get struck, well, it hurts. So there's a certain amount of the epee, therefore, this idea that when someone attacks me, I can only defend is like, huh? Like, I just can't get my head wrapped around that. And epee fixed that. So epee is the interesting weapon for me. Matthias L. Hooray, the NFA is repealed. How would common use of machine guns change how two-gun matches are designed?
Not at all.
Not whatsoever. It wouldn't affect it in the least.
Nope.
And in fact, what I would do is set up target arrays that look like they were tantalizingly useful with a machine gun. So people would want to flip the switch and watch their scores go downhill, because it's not how it works.
Guess what? Those guns work better in semi-auto.
Yep.
When people are watching this, have they seen our full auto AK test from?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Well, no, maybe.
I'm not sure exactly when this is being.
Yeah, no, they will. They
Okay.
will have seen it. Yeah.
So we have already touched on this with an array from Desert Brutality, where you made an offhand comment like, "Oh, that would have been easier." If
That
I
might.
full
I
auto."
said that might have been better with a full auto gun.
I think you said, "I guarantee I would have done 10,000% better in full auto."
And then Lee Armory came over, and they're like, they were a division sponsor, and they're like, we
They
have
have
one.
one.
And so we reshot the stage with a full auto gun. It was not better.
No.
Not even close to better. Yeah. And it was fun, though.
narrator voice. It turns out it was not better.
But it was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. But so first off, if the NFA is repealed, that doesn't mean that a lot of shooting ranges are going to suddenly allow full auto.
But let's assume they do.
They're not allowing it now, not because of any NFA thing, but because potential liability, safety, people who are going to get that M14, flip the switch, and go and drop rounds, God knows where.
Yeah.
Which ranges are justifiably
308 in space flight.
Yes,
Yeah.
there's a justifiable concern there. It may be, taken too far by some ranges, but a lot of ranges would continue to prohibit full auto. And then, of course, you're not going to do better firing in full auto.
Nope.
So it would be fun to watch some stage design specifically to try and get you to do it.
But if you did not watch the video with us and Lee Armory from Desert Brutality trying that, please do, because it really puts a big exclamation point on our point.
Yeah.
Here. Last question.
All right.
Brian R. Has there ever been a case where a last-ditch weapon, either by cutting corners of production, removing features, or a new firearm being rushed into production, actually turned the tide of war? He does put battle. Battle makes that a little bit hard, because there might be a particular skirmish on the Eastern Front with the SCG-44 where those guys held off an extra day. But he says turn the tide.
Do you consider? Yeah. Okay.
Let's take turn the tide then.
No.
No, never. And if you're at the point where you're rushing something into production, or you're cutting corners to reduce your overhead to manufacture more of these things because the loss rate's so extreme that you can't make enough of them, you've already lost. There's nothing that just doesn't. You're already at the point where all you're doing is buying time.
Yeah.
And if you're building some last ditch thing, you probably should have surrendered by now.
You're not buying time. You're just letting more people die pointlessly.
Which, when you look at this, think of the situations in which last ditch weapons were made. When
Japan, Germany,
those are the most.
Italy, sort of, but not really.
Well, and then I don't know if there was any particularly manufactured, but even if you want to go back into American history and look at the kind of stuff that was put into battle from the Confederates.
Oof, that was last ditch from the beginning.
Right. So
Coincidentally, they should have given up right at the beginning.
well, but anyone pushing that kind of stuff into the battle,
If you're placing your hopes on Griswold and Gunnison revolvers making a difference, you've already lost.
you've already lost, and all you're really doing is killing more people, some of your own, and even less of the enemy.
Yeah. Now, as we've been saying this, the one, not exception, but the one thing closest to an exception I can come up with is actually the Panzerfaust. Because that was
pretty
last-ditch
effective
weapon that was actually quite effective. Did it turn the tide? No, because the tide didn't turn, and the tide in this sort of thing probably never turned. But that was actually one of the very few examples I can come up with of an effective last-ditch weapon.
However, it did just prolong
Yeah.
the bleeding.
Yeah.
It really did.
Yep.
It didn't change anything. It just maybe it let a couple extra people get out of their apartment in Berlin, run away faster. But I mean, really, it didn't change anything. The outcome's still the outcome. More people died, and these last-ditch things didn't fix a thing.
Yeah.
The V2, all this stuff.
V2
V2 didn't do anything except
The
waste
V1 did
resources.
nothing.
No. So, no, if you're making last-ditch stuff, you've already lost.
Yeah.
So consider that as a historical lesson that I don't think we're ever going to learn. And there'll be some day where there'll be another situation with last-ditch stuff and this idea that this hope in one hand and in the other, and you know what's going to happen, right? So, anyways, that was long. This are all questions provided from Patreon supporters, $10 and above, right? $5 and above for Q&A, $5 and above for Q&A, $10 gets you Discord. Guys, thank you for this. We love your questions. We love your support. Thank you so much for keeping In Range alive. If you're not a Patreon supporter, please consider it. And if you are, thank you very much. And if you can't, just subscribe to one of our multiple distribution networks. You can find them all on inrange.tv. And thanks for watching.